Electoral Commission boss Charlotte Osei is expected in Parliament today to respond to questions put to her by the members of Parliament, as she is to brief MPs on how monies earned from the replacement of voter IDs and the sale of media accreditation cards ahead of the 2016 elections was spent. One of the issues expected to come up could also be the current internal wrangling at the EC following allegations and counter-allegations between Madam Charlotte Osei and her deputies. But how did we get here in the first place? Here is a news desk report.
Prior to the 2016 elections, journalists were required by the EC to pay 10 cedis as accreditation fees to cover the elections. This sparked some controversy, with many questioning the need to charge fees for a process that had been carried out in previous elections without such charges.
My problem with you, Electoral Commission, I think is shameful that you charge the media to cover the elections. We are not a very sincere people. We like to cover things up. It's just like state protocol asking journalists to pay money to cover the 6th March Independence Anniversary. I don't think it's a very good thing you've done. Sadly, we won't talk about it. We'll push it under the carpet. But you're denying journalists the right to report the truth and situations as they happen to people. I don't think it's a smart thing to do. I don't know why, as a journalist or as part of the media here, we should pay money to cover elections that have to do with that. If you listen to our brother from South Sudan, if we're not careful, we will end up reporting disaster. Little things like what the Electoral Commission has done to us as journalists is what starts these small things. What is 10 cedis to you from a journalist? What is 20 cedis to you from a journalist? We've done it since 1992. Why are you charging us? Because you want us to pay for accreditation? What is accreditation? A piece of paper with our names and lamination?
A group calling itself the International Standards Journalists Association, ISJA, filed a suit at the Human Rights Division of the Accra High Court, asking the court to compel the EC to, quote, issue accreditation tags forthwith to qualified Ghanaian journalists without demanding any financial payment from any of them to cover the 2016 elections, unquote. The group said the Commission's demand for payment of money as a condition for issuing the accreditation tag constitutes, quote, unconstitutional discrimination against each journalist on the basis of his status as a Ghanaian journalist. The plaintiff also argued that, quote, every citizen who votes is entitled to supervise the Electoral Commission in order to ensure transparency, credibility, legitimacy, legality, and correctness of election processes and outcomes, unquote. However, the Accra High Court dismissed the case brought against the EC by the ISJA. According to the ruling by Justice Gifty Ejayado, the plaintiffs failed to go through the right process in bringing their suit before the court. The court further fined the association an amount of 3,000 cedis. The Electoral Commission went ahead to charge the accreditation fees despite the outburst and complaints, and journalists have no choice than to pay the said fees in order to cover the elections. 6 months after the elections, the chairperson of the EC has been summoned by Parliament to brief MPs on how much the Commission made from the accreditation fees it took from journalists to cover the 2016 general elections. Incidentally, the EC's chairperson is appearing before the MPs at a period when some unidentifiable staff have written to the president seeking her impeachment. The faceless staff accuse her of, among others, arrogance and malfeasance, allegations she replies to in a 17-page document, also citing 2 of her deputies for insubordination and financial misconduct. The EC chairperson is expected to explain to the MPs how these monies were used and how much was accrued from the accreditation fees.
Let's get more on this. I'm joined live now by Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku Gakpo. Joseph, Thanks for joining us. When should we expect to see Madam Charlotte Osei appearing for the questioning?
Daniel, if you can hear me, that meeting is expected to be around 2 o'clock. In fact, there are a number of items that are on the agenda for the House today. The expected appearance of the gender minister. There is also supposed to be discussions around the headsman menace, and then there will be a conversation around a report that's expected to come to the House in connection with a shooting incident in the northern region. And then at 2 o'clock, MPs will be sitting as a committee of the whole, and that's when the electoral commissioner and also some of her commissioners will be appearing. She is expected to brief the House on the total amount which was collected from media representatives for covering the 2016 general elections, as well as replacement for lost or misplaced voters' ID cards, and how these amounts have been applied. That will be the focus of that particular meeting at 2 o'clock with all members of parliament in a closed-door session. When that is done, there will be another meeting that she would be holding with leadership when it comes to the electoral commissioners, Madam Charlotte Osei herself, and also other electoral commissioners. And that meeting, from what we understand, the agenda of that meeting will be to hold discussions with, the commissioners to resolve the apparent rift between the chairperson and some other members of the commission. And then the second issue would be to resolve the impasse between the chairperson of the commission and also other members of staff of the electoral commission. Let me speak briefly to a member of parliament here. Richard Koshiga is the MP for the Keta constituency. The entire sitting is expected to begin around 12 o'clock, and then the subsequent meetings with the commissioner will be around 2. But let's just get a brief understanding. What's your expectation when she appears before you, the committee of the whole, and even at the level of her meeting with leadership of parliament?
Yeah, thanks so much, and good morning to your viewers, especially the good people of Qatar, if they are watching me. A specific question has been asked. That is in relation to how much was collected from media practitioners who were to cover the last elections, as well as replacement of lost cards and all. And I think it's pertinent for members of parliament to know, because as far as we are concerned, the state is supposed to finance every bit of the work of the Electoral Commission. And so if these monies are collected, are they collected as in IGF or what? So it's a very legitimate, pertinent question that members would require answers to. And so I'm sure if she comes before members of parliament, there would be follow-up questions, based on the kind of explanation that she'll be giving to us, members of parliament, during that sitting of the committee of the whole.
And then there's the other bit, which should be the meeting with leadership, which will focus on agitations at the Electoral Commission. Would Parliament really be able to help do anything in terms of resolving the impasse? Because I'm looking at the wording of, the agenda for that meeting, and it's very specific that the EC, the focus of the meeting would be to resolve the apparent rift between the chairperson of the Electoral Commission and also other members of the commission. Would Parliament really be able to do that, resolving the impasse?
Of course, I believe strongly that you don't get any results if you don't attempt trying. So clearly, Parliament is intended to make the necessary efforts in resolving or addressing the challenge that has bedeviled the Electoral Commission. We all know too well that the Electoral Commission is the fulcrum of the democracy that we are practicing today. And if the credibility of the Electoral Commission is eroded, then what it means, therefore, is that our democracy can be in jeopardy. The reason for which efforts must be made from all stakeholders and from all angles, as it were, to ensure that the commission is intact, that the credibility of the Electoral Commission, is not tainted. So it's very crucial, and I believe strongly that the Speaker and the leadership will find a middle ground, for the commissioner and her deputies and the workers of the Electoral Commission or the staff, to really smoke peace pipe, and where there are the gray areas which border on alleged malfeasance, probably will be looked into,
Should you be meddling in this as Parliament, especially when there's a petition to the President and this issue is being dealt with at that level?
Well, of course, a petition to the President does not mean that Parliament, which is the bastion of the democracy that we're practicing must not express concern and must not also, as it were, take steps, as it were, to see what it can do, to really calm nerves and ensure that the Electoral Commission remains intact. Because clearly, like I mentioned earlier, if this Electoral Commission brouhaha is not handled with extreme care, at the end of the day, it is the Ghanaian people who will suffer. Sure. And that is why it will be critically important to see how, it can be handled by all the arms of government. Of course, the executive has been petitioned. That petition, obviously, can also be withdrawn by whoever petitioned the president. Because as long as the president has been petitioned, it ought to follow the normal legal processes, sure, which the president probably cannot even interfere with. But I believe that, the laws of Ghana are not cast in stone. We are the makers of the law, and laws obviously can be amended, or it can be, we can all agree, as it were, to do something about the law, as long as there's consensus in that direction. So I believe that is a resolvable matter, and it's a good step for the leadership of Parliament to wade into it, to see how they can help, as it were, to bring calm to all.
Many thanks, Honorable Koshiga. Just a brief word. Dr. Nana Uefria is the MP for Nua Dubiase. Thanks very much for the correction. Any major expectation as the EC boss appears before parliamentarians today, briefly?
Yeah, obviously. Things that's got to do with accountability, so keen on it. I hear it's going to be on the question on the charges to journalists. I'm likely to be interested in how, in the midst of press freedom, in the midst of adequate funding from government and donors, why would you want to charge 8 Ghana from the press, who are obviously a polite for the masses, or trying to police on that day for the masses, and also to give information to the mass or the populace. So it's something that I'm very much interested in. I'm also very much interested in the issuing of cards, because I know that when they issue a card, you pay into a commercial bank account of the EC, you take the slip to the district EC's office, and then the card is renewed for you. The point here is the internal audit mechanisms, and also the fact is why it has not reflected in their statement or their budget for us to know what's going on. Yeah, that's
how it all turns out.
Absolutely.
Many thanks for speaking to us. So those are the expectations of some of the MPs there, even as Madam Charlotte Osei prepares to appear before the House later at 2 o'clock today.
Right, thank you very much, Joseph Opoku Gakpo. He's our man there in Parliament, and of course, we will be bringing you more updates on that issue as the day progresses. Now, on the Super Morning Show this morning, the Deputy Chief of Staff, Abu Jinapo, indicated the President will act in accordance with the Constitution of Ghana with regard to the petition he has received.
There are different strands of issues in this whole saga. There's the issue of the petition for the removal of the chairperson. I'm not going to make any comment as to the merits or otherwise of the petition. The processes will unfold, and I believe that a determination will be made accordingly. I have confidence that whoever sits in judgment or has a role to play will do so dispassionately, in accordance with good conscience, in accordance with law and good judgment. There's another segment of the saga which borders on criminality, as you do know, which are matters that the Economic and Organized Crime office is IOCO is dealing with, which is resulted in some of the officers of commissioners of the Electoral Commission being asked to proceed on leave. But these are different matters. There's one matter where some group of people think that the chairperson of the Electoral Commissioner should be removed. There are well-stated grounds on which a chairperson of an Electoral Commission of Ghana can be removed. Well-stated grounds. The institutions of state will deal with those. And I make no prejudicial comments at all. There's another bit where law enforcement agencies are dealing with. I think it's extremely important that all of us allow the law and our institutions to work. It is in that regard, Kojo, that I was particularly saddened, especially given what I did know and what I know as we speak, when the political opponents of the president went to town, lambasting him, castigating him, and criticizing him for being behind a plot to remove the chairperson of the Election Commission, even to the extent of the minority holding a press conference in that regard. And it's come out clearly that, every objective-minded Ghanaian comes to the conclusion that this has absolutely nothing to do with President Akufo-Addo. Nothing. All of us do know. The matters have come out into the open. I believe we all learn some lessons out of this. When these matters come up, let's exercise some restraint.
There are some who suggest that in the same way that there are laid-down procedures for the removal, if necessary, of the chair, there are laid-down procedures for the removal of the deputy chairs. And there are some who suggest that Iyoko recommending to the chair that they be removed kind of removes that power from the president, who, by some understanding, ought to be the only one able to remove a chair or ask a chair to stand aside, step aside, sit aside while an investigation proceeds. What's the presidency's position on that?
First point is that nobody in Ghana is above the laws of Ghana. That's the first point. Second point is that in that regard, nobody is above the criminal laws of our country.